Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Director Duggar.
Here.
Chair Hartmeyer Prigg.
Here.
Director Hassan is absent. Director Kimmy.
Here.
Director Teeter.
Here.
Thank you. Director Tivnon.
Here.
Director Beatty.
Here.
Director Kim.
Here.
Director Walton.
He is 5 minutes late.
Okay. Director Ulvin. Okay. Director Lair.
Here.
Okay, that's the roll.
Thank you so much. First on our agenda is visitor comments. Visitor comments allow visitors to speak to the Bureau Board about matters not included on tonight's agenda or those that are included on the agenda, right? Recording Secretary, do we have anyone here to address the Bureau Board?
No, ma'am.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to board communications. Do any board members have any information they would like to share with the rest of the board and the interim executive director? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move to the consent agenda portion of the agenda. There are two sets of meeting minutes on the consent agenda tonight, May 23rd, 2023 and June 6th, 2023. Do I have a motion for these consent items?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there perfect? All right, so Director Teeter made the motion, Director Tivnon seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, will the recorder please take the roll call vote?
Director Lair.
Abstain.
Director Ulvin.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Director Walton. Director Kim. Okay, Director Beatty.
Yes.
Director Tivnon.
Yes.
Director Teeter.
Yes.
Director Kimmy.
Yes.
Chair Hartmeyer Prigg.
Yes.
Director Duggar.
Yes.
And back to Director Kim.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, motion carries. Let's see. Next, we have two business agenda items this evening. The first is Bureau Bill 2024-77, the Bureau 5-year action plan update. We will consider approving the board or the 5-year action plan and helping to implement the Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan. Tyler, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, thank you very much, Board. Good evening, Tyler Ryerson, the staff liaison to Bureau, and pretty excited about tonight because it's been a compilation of many days meeting with you, with our advisory committee. Thanks to Nick and Elaine for their hard work and Jeannie of putting it all together. Hopefully tonight is a night of kind of a small celebration of being able to put together our Bureau 5-year action plan. The last one we did was completed in 2020. So we've made it through COVID days and now we're moving forward to our next phase of what we're going to be doing here with our urban renewal funds that are available to us. As we know, we've had the actual plan that was adopted in 2011. And we have more than halfway through our maximum indebtedness. And we've done some pretty cool projects and programs, and we still have a lot of cool projects and programs that we can consider. And that's what these last few months have been together trying to figure out. So tonight, next slide, Janine, we've got a little bit of background. We're not going to spend a lot of time bouncing into things that we've already talked about. We have our final 5-year plan forecast expenditures. That's going to be not only in your packet, but also in the action plan itself. And we'll do that full overview of that action plan and talk about what our next steps and recommendations are. Next slide. So this is our recommendation to you, board members, as we are hoping to adopt the 5-year action plan that will be fiscal year 24 to 25 through 28, 29, and which will be help implementing the Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan. One note, and this will come out a couple times tonight, is that this is a plan that helps guide us. It's not necessarily set in stone, and we do expect that we will continue to come and visit in the years to come. It might be yearly, it might be every second year. It kind of depends upon where we are. So hopefully that gives us kind of a flavor for the evening. And again, Nick, thanks again for all your help, and let you go from here.
Thank you, Tyler. Always happy to be here with Bureau. We'll go quickly through this purpose and background section. So the 5-year action plan updates the prior plan from 2020. This update provides Bureau's 3 strategic priorities and forecast expenditures for fiscal years 25 through 29. It's bound by and implementing the goals of the voter-approved Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan. The 5-year action plan is non-binding framework for implementing the Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan and will help guide the annual budgeting process for Bureau. So the purpose of this is really to set expectations for the Bureau board, for city council, city staff, and the community. These are the projects and programs that Bureau intends to work on, and approximately when those projects would occur and how much funding each of those projects would receive. But these are not final decisions. Bureau will still complete the annual budget process, and that process is when official decisions will be made. The 5-year expenditures also are constrained by your actual financial capacity. So we've forecast how much revenue will be available, how much you'll be able to borrow, but we'll see in the coming years if those forecasts hold true. And one other thing on the kind of purpose here is that this 5-year plan, when it's completed, we're estimating only about $11 million of remaining maximum indebtedness capacity. So even though most of the conversations to this point talk about Bureau being just past the halfway point, when this 5-year period is over, you could be very close to the end of really investing in major projects in this area. So it certainly covers a very impactful period of time for Bureau over the next 5 years. And the next slide. So just want to make sure that what you're going to hear tonight is not going to be a lot of new information. Most of this is material that you've seen before and have helped staff and the consultant team develop over the course of several conversations over the past months since January. That includes multiple meetings with both Bureau and with the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee. So this really is the culmination of all of those past conversations. Next slide. All of the work that we've done here is guided by the 7 goals that were included in the voter-approved Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan. These goals inform project funding and are the basis for developing all the programs, creating the strategies, and laying the groundwork for reporting how urban renewal resources are used over time. I'm not going to read every one of these goals, but just the key titles: arts and culture, business support, housing, redevelopment, engagement, transportation, and added value. Next slide. So when voters approved the Central Beaverton Urban Renewal Plan, the maximum indebtedness was allocated across 5 different project categories. Most of the funding is allocated to the categories of transportation and infrastructure and joint investment programs, with smaller shares of funding allocated to oversight, incentives, and community identity projects. Note that these allocations are binding, but they're binding only for maximum indebtedness. So as there are other sources of funds that become available, known as program income, those funds are not subject to the same restrictions. So with that background, now we dig into the actual detailed financial projections here. At the last time I was with Bureau, we had a very similar set of slides here, but we have made some key adjustments since that last meeting. That includes increasing funding for community identity projects such as streetscape, creek, and gateway wayfinding. We've recategorized the First Street Dining Commons that was originally thought of as being more of the community identity project, and we're now housing that under the infrastructure improvements, along with the garage tenant improvements and management. By doing that, by shifting those projects into the transportation and infrastructure category, we've freed up more resources that are able to be used in those other categories that were more cost constrained. We've also reduced the property acquisition and affordable housing allocations to make sure that these investments are adhering to the amount that was approved by voters years ago. And we've recategorized the staffing allocations for projects. So when we last presented numbers, those weren't allocated to any bucket. And we've worked with staff. There's sort of a push and pull on whether those costs should be allocated under the oversight category or distributed to all the other categories of projects proportionately. And we've split the difference and really sort of have half of the costs in the oversight bucket and the other half distributed across the board. So all of those changes combined really shifted where these funds are being shown over the next 5 years. So this was a very similar slide to the last presentation showing the largest potential projects to be invested in over the next 5 years. We are estimating that Bureau would have the capacity to spend 88 million over this 5-year period, but some of those expenditures are for debt service, some of them are for staffing costs. So when we're looking at sort of the real project costs, we're looking at about $60 million over this 5-year period. And these 8 projects that are on this list represent 49 out of that $60 million. So these are by far the bulk of the expenditures that we're estimating here. Some of the changes to this list since the last time we spoke, funding for affordable housing, that amount has decreased by $2 million. Funding for property acquisition and due diligence decreased by $1.5 million. Again, both of those changes were because we had a limit on that category, joint investment, and we need to make sure that we are working within that limit. Funding for streetscape improvements has increased by almost $2 million. So it's showing up on this list now. It wasn't listed previously as one of these major projects over the 5-year period. And then the First Street Dining Commons has the same project cost estimate on here, but again, it's been recategorized out of community identity and into the transportation and infrastructure category. All the other dollars and projects that are listed on here remain unchanged from the last time we spoke. Getting into the details, here are the planned projects within the transportation and infrastructure improvements category, the largest category of expenditures. Compared to the February meeting, the planned expenditures in this category have increased fairly significantly from around 23 million to close to 30 million. That includes an allocation of staffing charges that previously were unallocated. So we see every bucket go up as we've allocated those staffing charges across each of the categories. But this also is the fact that we've shifted the First Street Dining Commons and various parking garage and parking program expenditures into this category. And on the next slide, we see the joint investment category. These planned expenditures for joint investments decreased. They decreased because we were going to be exceeding the limit that was voter approved. Even now, these numbers result in a slightly higher set of expenditures than voter approved. But as we mentioned at the beginning, the voter approval only affects maximum indebtedness. And so we do anticipate using program income to fund some of the expenditures here. So that allows these expenditures to happen while still being consistent with what the voters approved. Next slide on debt service and oversight. This category has always been unfortunately named because actual debt service payments don't fit in here. This is only for tracking maximum indebtedness, and debt service payments don't count against maximum indebtedness. Only the original capital expenditures do. So what we're really looking at here are administrative overhead costs and the cost of actually incurring new debt, those financing fees. So the changes that we've seen in this category are that we've included roughly half of all staffing allocations under this bucket of debt services and oversight. Historically, the city had looked at including all of the costs of staffing allocations here. Our new approach is including half in this category and half distributed to the other project categories. Next slide. oh, you're already there, it looks like, on incentive programs. Um, Other than a small increase to the cost of this category for staffing allocations, the rest of these expenditures remain unchanged from what we presented in February. And then if we get to community identity, when we're looking at the community identity category, this had a lot of shifting around. Again, the largest category item here was the First Street Dining Commons project. By shifting that up into transportation and infrastructure, it freed up a lot of these resources to go to the other projects on this list. And so we see significantly more funding planned to be spent on streetscape improvements, creek enhancements, and gateway signage, other identity projects. So this kind of had, I'd say, the biggest transformation. And that's largely due to the feedback that we received from Bureau and from URAC at the previous conversations we had. The next slide gets us to debt service. These, again, don't count against the limits, but just showing you where your dollars are going. And you currently have outstanding debt that has payments of over 2.7 million per year. We do anticipate new debt over this period of time that would come close to doubling those annual debt service payments. And we'll wind up using a significant amount of your capacity in those later years. That's typical of tax increment areas and urban renewal areas. As you get closer to finishing your projects, more and more of your annual revenue is tied up on debt service payments in those later years. And then these next two slides here are sort of a recap of how much funding is allocated to each of these categories and how much has been used to date, how much is planned to be spent over this next 5-year period, and how much we anticipate would be remaining at the end of this 5-year period. The bars are all spread out to kind of show out of 100%. So when you see, for example, debt service and oversight, the length of those bars look the same as the length of transportation and infrastructure. There's a lot more funding up in the transportation and infrastructure category. So really what this is meant to show is proportionately out of the amount that was allocated to each of these categories, what percentage do we anticipate to be remaining at the end of this 5-year period? With transportation and infrastructure, we can see most of the funding is anticipated to be spent by the end of this period. The small amount of orange that we see on that top bar is representative of the program income that we anticipate being spent on projects in this category. A lot of program income comes from the operation of your parking program, and there's a lot of sense in including a lot of those revenues to be spent on those operations in coming years. And so that's why we see those dollars remaining in the transportation and infrastructure category. And we look at the remaining amount of funding there, which is 7.3 million. A chunk of that is going to be the ongoing annual operations for the parking garage and for your parking program. And those will extend out into future years and will need to be funded by ongoing program income. On joint investment, this is the one category where if you look at the amount used to date and the amount planned, the sort of teal and purplish colors on this bar chart, it actually exceeds the amount that has been allocated by the voters in the original plan. And the only way that that's possible is through allocation of program income. And so when we look at the historical revenues that this area has generated and the amount planned in the future years, we do believe there's sufficient capacity in program income to fund the additional projects in this category that allow you to fund all the projects listed in the joint investment category. Worth noting that city staff are still planning to come back to Bureau in the coming months and work on having a more carefully constructed program income policy. And if that changes where these dollars want to be spent in future years, then that might shift how much you choose to spend on the joint investment projects going forward. Debt service and oversight at the bottom of the page has one of the largest proportions of their funds unspent over this upcoming 5-year period. So $2.5 million remaining, which is a good chunk of the total amount allocated to this category. Again, that's normal because in the coming years, you might be stopping funding most of your major projects as you get closer to using up your maximum indebtedness. But this area will be around for quite a few more years, collecting tax increment, making debt service payments, sort of operating in administrative capacity. So there will be ongoing costs that will need to be covered through that bucket. And then the next slide is, I think, the last one on my portion of the presentation, the incentive programs and community identity. Community identity, we are planning to use most of the funds over this 5-year period. That's one where you can see historically very little has been used. And we are planning to spend most of it in this period of time because we heard so much enthusiasm for getting these dollars spent on community identity projects sooner rather than later. On the incentive programs, there would still be some remaining capacity after this 5-year period. Again, that's rather common that you'd have ongoing investments in these incentive programs, and you'd want to continue being able to invest some funds in that in later years. And with that, I think I'm going to turn things over to Janine for the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Nick. So with all of that groundwork, we built the 5-year action plan into a readable plan for public consumption. So we put together in an 8-page format a layout that talks about the purpose of the document itself, and the fact that, as Tyler mentioned, and I think Nick also mentioned at the beginning, that this is a guiding plan and it is not a binding as for these elements, but it'll help us guide as we go forward into future budget years. We also have a statement about what urban renewal is and the guidance for the plan with the goals and the funding allocations noted there. We have a 2-page spread on the 3 strategic priorities with some project highlights, and the sub-bullets of the priority areas are what we heard in our work session and synthesized into those 3 key strategy areas. Then we note that the additional programs and policies and adopted plans that we have will be implemented through these strategic priority areas and projects that get implemented. And we've listed out some of the key action items that will happen over these next 5 and 5+ years, and then break down the 5-year forecast items with the projects and the total there, and have a map on the next page. So that's all in your packet. So I just ran through that really quickly. So next steps, tonight we are seeking your approval of this 5-year action plan. As Nick mentioned, we will be coming back to BURA in coming months to discuss program income policy discussions. And then every 1 to 2 years, we anticipate updating this plan. This is an update of a plan from 2020. We don't anticipate that being such a long spread in between coming back to this. Now that we're coming to fruition on a lot of these major projects and towards the end of the expenditures at the end of this 5-year term, we want to make sure we're staying on track with you and getting your guidance. So tonight we're asking the board to approve the plan. And any questions? Oh, I'll just say that we are not doing a resolution for this plan. It's a more informal approval that follows the structure of the 2020 approval. In coming times, we may bring a resolution to make it a more formal approval.
Thank you, Janine. It looks like Director Teeter.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the direction this is taking, and I would definitely support this. I have one question and then 2 goals that I would like to highlight, personal goals. The first question is regarding the property acquisition item within the joint investment category. Can we go back to the year-by-year breakdown of that one? Yeah, so I'd love if staff can give y'all's perspective on the rationale for why we might need $2 million or $1 million in the later years of this plan. As I'm looking at it, I see that I'm thinking, will we be having the need to acquire properties if we've got less financial ability to incentivize different activities or fund different projects on those properties? But I would love y'all's perspective for some of the rationale here and some of y'all's thinking.
I'll take that as a start. And then Tyler, please feel free to answer as well. So with property acquisition, it's one of the opportunities where we have program income potential as well. As we sell properties, we can reinvest that income and have that coming back to us for further reinvestment. So that can be one of those areas that has that longer lifespan.
Okay, Tyler, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that, this is the most interesting one. And as we've had conversations with the Bureau Board over time, it's like, this is one of our best tools that we have in order to help leverage other projects and public dollars. And the actual acquisition in which we pull back a little bit, we do have a lot of opportunities, and we want it to be flexible. So, today it may not make sense, but tomorrow something may come along and it makes more sense to use that dollar. We're hoping that as we kind of move forward, we have that placeholder. One of the things to be thinking about too is improvements in the creek or stormwater improvements, which may require some creek acquisition. That acquisition dollar could be used for acquisition for creek area, for floodplain storage, or for creek improvements, and so we can kind of use that dollar in different ways. So this is one of the best tools we have, and but we don't have anything specific that we're identifying at this point.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm good with having that how it is, and we can keep on looking at it over the next year or two. Okay, two goals that I want to highlight. Whenever I talk with people in downtown about what they are really wanting to see, one of the top things that comes up is just better crosswalks, marked crosswalks. I think it would fit within the transportation and connectivity item. So I would personally love it if we could have all of our crosswalks in at least the Old Town area painted at some point over the course of this plan. And then another one is tree canopy coverage, and that might fit within the streetscape improvements, but these are just some more programmatic things I'm thinking through. I don't think it makes sense to highlight them specifically in this plan, but just letting y'all know that this is where my head is at as some of the top priorities for me. But I love the plan. I'm good with approving this.
Thank you. Director Olvin. No.
Last time. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay.
First question for Nick. You had kind of updated what is expected to be spent with this 5-year plan. Have you updated the projections of foregone revenue to the overlapping taxing districts? We're trying to plan as well, and anticipation of the revenue that we forego with all of our urban renewal plans. You've done that work?
Yeah, we didn't put together a formal deliverable on that, but we have those numbers in our spreadsheet. So piece of cake for us to send that spreadsheet over to you.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. And I understand it's just a guesstimate in some instances. And I don't have any intention to oppose the plan for the next 5 years. And I appreciate all the hard work that staff has done. I do kind of feel like that the moving, like the staffing allocation, I think that strays a little bit from the original intent when it was proposed to voters and with plan design. So again, not anything that I would oppose, but I noticed that. And similarly with the wayfinding, moving that into the transportation and infrastructure. While I know that those items are good and they make it easier to get around, I don't know that that necessarily attracts private investment, which should always be kind of the bearings, I think, of the plan. And those are just some things that I that stuck out to me as far as how we're drifting a little bit from what was originally agreed and approved from voters. And that's it. Again, I'm happy I'm not going to oppose it, but those are just some observations.
Is there a staff response to Director Olvin?
I'll just mention that the wayfinding is under community identity still. So that's the only response I have, but thank you.
I think it was the First Street Dining Commons that we moved out of that category. And Tyler might have other comments he could add here. When we looked at that, I think we looked kind of carefully at, well, what would be the actual capital expenditures happening there? And a lot of them would be physical investments in the street. So ultimately, there would be programmatic expenditures that would happen that would be sort of community identity based. But the expenditures we're looking at here are the physical improvements in the streetscape, which we felt truly do fit under the transportation and infrastructure category.
Yeah, I agree there, Nick. My apologies. It sounds like I'm having microphone issues tonight. Seems like whenever I'm on Bureau, I have microphone issues, but never hear that in other meetings. So my apologies. Hopefully it's okay right now, generally. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly right. If there was a First Street Commons actual improvement, streetscape improvement, sidewalks, street lights, street trees, that's kind of why we have shifted that over to the infrastructure. Any actual management operations, that is the area that we are looking at other alternatives than Bureau to pay for those for those day-to-day activities. And so we're still working on kind of the nitty-gritty detail of how that works, but at this point, the commons are slid over.
Thank you. Director Olvin, I actually have a follow-up to your statement about like the staffing as you think it's straying. I'm just trying to understand more about the comment. Is that like staff funding coming from this at all, or that it was moved?
Kind of both. So originally the intent, right, in those categories, which were largely based around infrastructure, is incentivizing businesses to locate because you're reducing the impediments for them to have a facility there. And so it takes away from those investments that can be made. And I think it strays from kind of the original vision for some of those categories. But again, it's not so extreme, and I understand the rationale. So it's not something that we would want to interfere with if that's what the group collectively decides. It's just, I wouldn't want to see that continue to slide over time just based on the original commitments made to all the overlapping taxing districts and, depicted to the voters.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Director Lair.
Yeah, so I have a comment and then a question. So my comment, I know a lot of us in the last meeting had really expressed an interest in that community identity part, and you guys took that feedback and you made the changes and really appreciate that. So thank you. The question I have is about the shift in spending in the transportation infrastructure and the joint investments. I guess my question would be, what is, I think Nick, I heard you say it was, well, the previous targets weren't going to be in line with the voter approval. What's different between this meeting in February that would lead to such a large shift in those numbers?
Yeah, the first meeting in February, we hadn't allocated where the staffing costs were going to go. So we weren't sure if all of them were going to wind up in each of the individual project categories, or if none of them were going to wind up in each project category, because we were going to force it all into the oversight category, and ultimately decided on splitting the difference because you could make strong arguments either way. And then we also hadn't decided where and how much program income should be allocated to different categories. So in February, we knew that the allocation to projects in the joint investment category would exceed the amount of voter allocation if we wound up having a large share of staffing costs there, and if we didn't have any program income allocated there. And just over the last 2 months, we've wound up solidifying assumptions on those pieces. I think the only project that we slid out of that category into the transportation and investments was the tenant improvement costs related to the retail space within the parking garage, because it's within the parking garage and all other costs and revenues associated with the parking garage are treated as part of that transportation and infrastructure category. We felt there was a strong argument that the tenant improvement component belongs with all of the other garage operations and expenditures up there. So I think that was the only one that slipped into that category. Beyond then that, we still did make some reductions in some of those large line items, affordable housing, property acquisitions, to get us to a level that complies with the original voter approved amounts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Beatty. Mayor Beatty, I cannot hear you. Can anyone else hear her? No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
I think all of us are just having microphone issues today. I definitely hear Cassandra's point on like where we think it's supposed to spark growth, but I just think that what we've done with First Street Dining Commons and the businesses around there and what it's been able to do for them really does. Instead, people are choosing to build their restaurants there because of that asset. So I definitely think, we couldn't have known 11 years ago that we were going to be in that situation to do it, but I definitely think it's a value add. I mean, there was just an article in the paper last week about a Portland business person that had to do a curb cut that didn't make any sense. And so I think those kind of things, if we don't pay for them and how we're doing it, it's going to drive business away too. We're literally seeing it in our partner cities. But I do take seriously your points around the district and what you guys have to forego in urban renewals because your district is so large. I hope that our district is returning value, which I think it is. But I think it's something after you retire, we're going to have to find someone to remind us of that too, because it's not just us here. It's really about our partners and THPRD too that came along on this journey with us. And I know I have found myself over the last few years eclipsing the opinions of our special districts, and I'm trying to pay, especially in our own budgetary crisis that we're in, paying more attention to how we're impacting those around us.
Thank you. I'll just comment really fast. I really appreciate that. And I will say still, as it relates to tax increment financing and how you have done it and the way that your staff manages it, you're still the gold standard. And we recommend other cities look to Beaverton because of how well you've managed it. So that's why we continue to remain engaged. So I'm really happy that you want to have like a replacement NAG because I feel like that's what I'm always doing for the group. But I certainly want the takeaway to be that we are so impressed by everything that you've done and think, like you said, it is important, even with this 5-year plan that we're all about to consider approving, that you have to be nimble because market conditions can change. So we get that too.
I was going to go with informant versus nag, but I'm not one to coach other people's language.
It's all right. I wear it with, honor.
All right, Director Kimmy.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good. All right. I thank you for all the presentation and all the hard work that you guys all put in. I appreciate it. I just have a question where when I think of a First Street Dining Commons, I think it belong more to the community identity, but now it's moved to transportation and infrastructure. Just trying to understand the justification to move to that category. What aspect of First Street Dining Commons is able for us to put it into transportation and infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll try to take that, Board Member Kinney. So as it had been brought in during COVID and it became a place where folks were able to gather because they could not do that in businesses. It was a phenomena that was happening across the country and across the world, in which communities were trying to figure out ways to ensure small businesses would survive the pandemic. We created this in a temporary nature. We didn't think it was going to last too long, and we didn't think COVID was going to last too long. And so we've decided as a body to continue moving forward with it as a place. If council and the Bureau decides to actually do something more and let this ride as it is, or something a little bit different, then the actual improvement could be long-standing and not in a temporary way. That could be a actual streetscape improvement. So think of the narrow sidewalks that are in that area. There are 0 street trees. There's 0 street lighting in the area. It has parking underneath the temporary nature of the structures out there. We could bring back parking. We can potentially close off the street from time to time. Maybe it's just on a Friday night. Maybe it's during the summer. Maybe it's a combination of weekends. Maybe it's all the time. Whatever that actually looks like. But the actual infrastructure that could continue to enhance the economic vitality of downtown can be done through this bucket of transportation infrastructure, in our opinion. And it becomes a permanent thing versus this temporary community gathering place that could be used in different ways. So as we were thinking really hard about community identity bucket, which is a very small percentage of the overall use of maximum indebtedness, we were like, and we kept hearing from the board that community identity was important. Creeks, other streetscape improvements, other things that we can actually do to wayfind and have gateways in the area. We was like, we need more money to do those kinds of projects. And if First Street Commons becomes a thing in reality, in real life, then that could be in a streetscape infrastructure bucket. And that's where that was kind of how we got to that point, recognizing what we were hearing from the board, that community identity is really important. If the commons becomes more permanent, we can make it into a permanent thing, but we'd have to use it as an infrastructure piece. And hopefully that is the guiding principles there.
Well, I mean, yeah, thank you. I get all that. But my question, I think, still hasn't been answered in a way that, so it's mainly streetscape improvement, but how is it justified to go into transportation and infrastructure?
Well, it's infrastructure, right? And it's infrastructure in the right of way.
Right. So transportation, right of the way, improve the sidewalk, or right of the way. Okay. Okay. I get that.
Yeah, and right, and that could include streetlights and undergrounding of utilities, which we have some overhead utilities in the area too that we would that would be part of the project as well, if it was decided upon to do so.
Right. If it's decided upon. Okay, I get that. Another one quick question. I know we will for the investment piece, private and public investment. What you're telling us that we'll almost run out of money in about 5 years or so. And then if we are ever creative, then we could move that infrastructure and transportation into that category when we are incentivizing further investments.
So correct that for most of these categories, we do anticipate being close to using up the full amount that was allocated after this 5-year period. And that's particularly true for the joint investment category. And so then thinking about how you could continue to make joint investments occur in future years. And one approach I think you're suggesting is, if there are transportation and infrastructure needs for those businesses, then yes, you could spend some of the remaining capacity on building infrastructure that then takes that burden off of those private developers and allows their development to succeed while still spending it in the infrastructure category. So that works. And then the other approach is to continue to explore more avenues of program income, which we talked about probably at every meeting that I've been with this board. And we are planning to work with city staff to come up with a more comprehensive program income policy. But if you can develop these other sources of funds, then those funds can be things you can use long-term to continue to invest in public-private partnerships and those joint investments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
Chair, can I jump in really quick? Staff, were you wanting a motion, or it sounded like you just want an informal approval?
Yes, a motion to approve.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I'll motion to approve the Bureau 5-year plan.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Teeter and seconded by Director Duggar. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion or debate, do we take a roll call vote for this? I think we do always for the record, correct? Okay. Recorder, would you please take a roll call vote for us?
Director Tivnon,
Yes.
Director Beatty. Okay. Director Kim,
Yes.
Director Walton,
Yes.
Director Ulvin,
Yes.
Director Lair,
Yes.
Director Duggar,
Yes.
Chair Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Director Kimmy,
Yes.
Director Teeter.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have Bureau Bill 2024-78, the garage operations for the downtown parking compliance pilot contract and budget update. We will be considering approving a year contract extension for SP Plus, who currently manages the on-street parking pilot and compliance program in downtown, as well as the operations and management of our Beaverton Central Parking Garage. So Casey, if you please provide us with an update.
Hi, good evening, board members. My name is Casey Graziano. I am the parking operations manager here at the city, and I'm here to talk about a contract extension with SP Plus, who currently operates the Beaverton Central Garage and our downtown parking compliance pilot program. So overview for today, sorry, my cat has to jump in every time he hears me chatting, is to approve the SP Plus contract extension. And then I'm going to give a little update on where we are with parking right now. So we, the original PO amount was for $879,000. That was budgeted to cover 2 years of operations, but so far it's on track for us to cover 3 years of programming operations. Originally, we had estimated the annual cost would be about $440,000 per year. We have gotten to an actual annual cost of about $332,000 per year. So to continue the program, not just parking compliance, but also the garage, we're asking for an additional $280,000 to the original PO amount. This isn't a request for any additional money necessarily. This is already built into our fiscal year 25 budget. And that would bring our total cost to about $1.1 million. If everything had come to fruition and our original cost was about $440,000 per year, this would cost us approximately $1.5 million. So we're saving about $400,000, and we've really stretched the original PO quite far. So for revenues, the parking compliance pilot program kicked off in June 2023. On the table, which is why you see no revenue there. And we've had limited revenue for on-street permits prior to this fiscal year. In November of 2023, the Bureau Board approved additional garage revenue streams. Those were monthly parking, bike permits, validations, and we're expecting those to start before the end of this current fiscal year. In our revenues, we have some reimbursements. Lost at the Round is responsible for 23% per legal agreements to build a garage. And then Scanlon Kemper Bard, or SKB, they also have an obligation to provide reimbursement for operations and maintenance of the garage. So I wanted to touch on-street parking permits briefly. So changes to on-street parking permits may be possible to increase our revenues. Currently, there is no charge for residential permits, and those are valid for a year. And then employee parking permits are $30 per quarter, so about $10 per month. The only thing to keep in mind with that is that the cost per our city code, the cost for a permit cannot exceed its actual cost to administer the permit. And so that's something that we can also consider to generate additional revenue. So that's my coverage on the contract extension and the dollars. But I want to give a brief update on our next steps for our programs. So next up, we're currently in the process of analyzing the data that we've collected so far since July of 23. We've collected over 1 million data points so far in the 9 months that we had operated, and we're collecting more every day. We're expecting preliminary information in early May, which is really exciting. We're also going to be completing a reserve study for the Beaverton Central Garage. We had awarded RDH Building Science in April, and we're currently in the process of contracting with them to get that kicked off. In early 2025, we'll begin the RFP process for a new contract for garage operations. And during that time also, we'll begin to work with the Beaverton Police Association, Bureau, and other stakeholders to determine the permanency of the parking compliance program. And now I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Casey. I had a question. If the money that was spent on the enforcement vehicles, will those vehicles be retained by the city, even if we change providers?
Yes, so those have permanent hardware that have been mounted to them. Those will stay with the program as long as they're operable, and it makes sense to continue to use those. They have cameras and other equipment that's permanently installed. Those won't go away, and Bureau owns those vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Director Walton.
I just wanted to ask sort of a question of have we considered, I understand sort of the original intention behind sort of the charging for the parking in the building of the garage, and obviously sort of it has not gone in the way that sort of I think was thought. And then part of the way to get after that was to create more enforcement on the streets so that would move more long-term folks to the garage. But is there at all a scenario where we just hold the gate up and let people use the parking garage and don't charge for it until there's more demand? Because it's a lot more money is getting sunk into enforcing things and basically charging for the garage than it's actually making. And so has that been a conversation at all, or is that, sorry if that's so wildly outlandish for me to even ask the question, but.
No, and it's a good question. That hasn't been something that we have considered. When you look at the total operations, it's all lumped in mostly together. We're not too far. We're not too far from breaking even with garage operations between our reimbursements and our yearly revenue. And then we also have these additional revenue streams that are soon to come in. And so monthly parking is going to provide us with a more consistent, monthly revenue that's generated. And so right now, no, we haven't considered that.
Okay.
Director Teeter.
Casey, I've got a question about the contract details and then a couple of programmatic questions. So the contract was signed in December 2021, but the implementation of the program didn't start for 2 years after that. But we were paying for services during that time, or we were paying for the contract during that time. Can you touch on why all of that is and why we weren't receiving services for when we were paying for a contract?
Definitely. So we have a memorandum of agreement with the Beaverton Police Association, and when the contract was signed, that MOA was almost done. And so we had to go back and re-engage with our stakeholders about this program and get the BPA back on board. And COVID threw this off quite significantly. And that's why we launched, 2 years after the contract had started. And that's just on the parking compliance portion. For the garage operations, the garage has been operated by SB Plus since 2021. And you see on this chart here that a lot of the 22 and 23 expenses were purchasing vehicles, purchasing hardware, getting the vehicles branded. And so we ate a lot of those costs up front. And instead of, that's not just payroll on that side.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. My concern was that we were paying a vendor for services that we weren't receiving.
No.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other comments. First, about on-street residential permits and on-street commercial permits. I think we need some urgency and increasing the cost of some of those monthly permits. One of the biggest constraints that's put on our on-street parking is our residents who park for free for days at a time, and that blocks up a lot of the capacity that should be available for people stopping in for businesses or just coming for quick visits. And when people are able to park on the street for free, they're not going to pay for the permits that are internal to their own apartment complexes or things like that, because those could be $150 or so a month. So I would love I don't know if this is a staff urgency or a board urgency, but for us to really look at increasing some of those costs to recoup the cost of providing on-street parking for the public.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And then one other question. This is related to on-street parking and the cost of on-street parking. Can we look at having paid on-street parking just in general? I think this is one of the challenges with the garage itself is people won't park in a garage if they can park for free on the street. And I think this is a direction we should start moving as downtown gets busier, just to make sure that there's somewhat of a supply still open on each block just by paid parking. But I don't know how extensive of a planning process that would be for creating a meter made program or anything like that. But Casey, if you have thoughts, I'd love to hear some there.
Yeah, that is something that that we could explore and look at as part of our data collection. I don't really want to get too far into the weeds because we don't quite know where we would want to put those in, but it's absolutely a possibility and something that we could explore, and it could be a recommendation of the overall parking management plan that we would bring to the board and traffic commission and other folks.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I was just going to add, just keep in mind there's administrative costs, right? If we have some need to read said meters or enforce fines and things like that, it will expand the footprint. And so it may not be the cost benefit, but I think it's worth studying.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I feel like highest priority would be the residential and commercial permits first, and then next steps to follow after that. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I can add just a little bit to it, the data that we're collecting. The data is there and we're doing this data collection even past our 6 o'clock hour. And so we're trying to understand, who's using it, how often are cars in our downtown, and that data collection will help us be thinking about, what should we do? And without jumping to a solution, but actually, thinking about the various options that may be at our hands.
That'd be good too. Thank you.
Director Duggar.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. Going off memory, but the on-street parking permit, it said there was a wait list. Is the wait list for residential or for commercial/employers?
It's a total bucket, so it could be both residential and employees when we hit our maximum. We haven't hit our maximum yet this year. We still have about 20 permits left, and we also have kind of a safety net to release more if we find that we need more. But to answer your question, it's combined. It's all on-street parking permits combined.
Okay, so just so I completely understand, because I've heard from a couple business owners that it has been difficult for their employees to get passes. You're telling me that's not the case?
Not right now. So when we implemented the wait list last year, we did have quite an extensive wait list of about 60, but that restarted at the beginning of this calendar year. I haven't heard of anyone having an issue getting a permit so far this year.
Okay, because I'll be really curious, because the other kind of second point is in the statement of work, it said the patrol hours, I believe, are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Is that accurate still?
Yes, that is our timed hours, but we are extended past that till about 10 p.m. to gather evening data.
But enforcement stops at 6 p.m. though, right? Like ticket writing and things like that.
Timed enforcement stops at 6 p.m. So we still cite for safety violations, so ADA violations and fire hydrants, and then wrong way.
So if I'm realistically, I can park my car just hypothetically there at 4:05, right, in a 2-hour spot and not have to move it until 9 a.m. the next day.
Correct.
So I actually have an issue with that. Most of as a downtown resident and as a friend of many business owners, like most of the downtown parking problem actually starts at about 6 o'clock, because it's when the dinner rush happens. It's when the businesses are churning, the restaurants, the places like that. They need the parking then. And so I think we've got to rethink this as far as the timing concerns. Like, and also if I'm a downtown resident, right, why would I buy a residential permit when I know very publicly that if I get home from work at 4 o'clock, I can park my car. If I leave before 9 o'clock, I'm good, right? Like and I see it a lot, like of the complexes when I walk by. And my concern is for our small businesses. They need that parking turning. And I just don't think the framework that we're in right now does it very well. From a revenue perspective, I like to see the increasing numbers. I'm less concerned about the individual permit fees as much as actually create, the whole framework should be around creating spots. And we're not, I just feel like that's a missed opportunity. But I'm in support of the contract. I would like to see some of those changes make though.
Yeah, and we may in changing our time limits after we get all the data and our pilot is done and if we go into a full program, changing the hours is absolutely something that we may recommend. But currently we're enforcing it as is. But I absolutely hear you, and that could be something that we bring to the board and traffic commission later on in council.
Yeah, I talked to at least 7 or 8 businesses, and they all understand like parking's tight, and everybody's told me the same thing. Like the problem is in the evenings, and I don't know. Like I'm a little nervous that we're not going to fix this until next year. When the data comes back. Like I don't think we need to wait that long. So don't want to mess up the conversation tonight, but I do think we've got to do some work on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just remind us that the agenda topic is the contract extension and approval. It does seem like there's appetite for a future parking conversation, and I'll leave that up to staff to determine if that's a council policy conversation, because parking is more than just within Bureau, though I think that's where parking enforcement is centralized, but just wanted to kind of keep us on track of our future parking conversation. Director or Mayor Beatty.
I'm here to mess it up because I don't want to approve this contract. All the things that John said are things that we have been saying over and over and over and over again. We've asked for the cost of the parking permits to be realistic. I think that I have even walked and talked with the city manager and businesses. Like, there's not a lot of coaching happening with our provider. They're really overzealous with ticketing. They're not really easy to work with. I think the intent of what we wanted isn't being met. And so I don't want to wait another year. I want these issues to be solved, or at least on the way of working towards a better solution before we agree to another year. So I haven't heard anything compelling enough to move me from my point, and tonight I'll be voting no on this contract extension.
Director Kimmy.
Okay. I don't know if this is the question for this or the council, but Tiger downtown area has angle parking. Everybody's going toward the angle parking. I'd like to have future conversation on maybe having some streets with angle parking to provide more parking and space. So just putting it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Casey, when does the current contract expire?
The current contract has already expired, and so we did an extension until June 30, 2024. So it actually, sorry, yeah, it expires June 30, 2024.
And if we fail to extend the contract, we just no longer have an operator of the garage or parking enforcement?
Right now, yes, that is what would happen.
Okay. Mayor Beatty.
I think sometimes people are inclined to take my lead, so I'm going to give you one more chance to help me get to yes here. What are you going to do to make sure that the points that we continue to say are going to be realized in this next year? Because I've met with the city manager, I've met with the parking staff, I've met with Dan, I've talked about all these same issues, and literally nothing has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, I'm gonna hit the ground running and work with Dan and everyone and getting those.
And maybe it's unfair for you to have to answer this. Maybe Dan should start answering these questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to. You know, it does seem like the operator agreement that we're talking about from a bureau standpoint is probably separate from some of the issues you're talking about. I understand like that they're the ones who are responsible and tasked with the implementation of guidance, but it feels like this is probably more of a policy question, maybe a council question, in the sense of like the pilot and how it's being set up, and maybe it does come back either to bureau or to the council as that policy discussion around hours or around some of these things. I think ultimately we were trying to kind of hold to the concept as approved for the pilot, be able to get the data and then make some of these adjustments. But I hear you loud and clear that we need to do it sooner potentially, and so then that's just a question of how do we adjust, and it's hard to do that in this context with the item being the contract in essence, and do we extend it?
Well, I guess I disagree with you on the fact that like we should. There's a lot of data here. We've been collecting a lot of data, and the data points towards this isn't working. And so, give me your pitch on why I should agree to follow your lead for another year.
I guess I'm trying to separate necessarily following my lead or not in terms of the data, but also like making sure we've got an operator for the, essentially the garage and the compliance. I think what we're talking about isn't ending compliance. It's about how do we adjust compliance. And so I think that's feedback we can take and adjust, whether we sort of amend the hours and the sort of operation of the pilot, or whether we, sort of conclude the pilot sooner or earlier and try to use the data we have. I think we would need to dive into that a bit more in terms of what data we actually have collected to be able to coherently come back to you with some conclusions aside from what you're hearing. And I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm just saying like from the, the quantitative versus, some of the business and resident feedback.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that's compelling enough for me to vote yes.
Okay.
Okay. Director Duggar.
Yeah, I was gonna thank you, Mayor, for that. I really appreciate that. And I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, but I kind of want to split the difference here, and maybe I could support a 6-month extension with these things being worked on, and I will not vote no twice, right? Or I won't vote yes twice. So I'll give you 6 months to kind of get to do these things. And if it comes back without significant changes, then I'm, you know, I don't think I could vote for it again. So maybe that's the compromise I'm willing to do.
Director Walton.
Yeah, Casey, can I ask a couple of clarifying questions? Can you put the slide back with the data, please?
Which
The
the
expense. Yeah. So can you, I know you said this, but can you remind me? So like, why is the contract? Because there's like a bunch of things here that like I'm trying to reconcile in my mind. So there's like the amount of the original contract, then there's like, well, we over sort of spent that contract, and so there's like the contract increased amount, and then there's the extension, and then there's the broader conversation about does everybody feel like it's working and accomplishing the goals, and like all of that kind of right now is like wrapped up together. So I'm like trying to like parse it apart. And so it's like, why do we need more money than what was originally in the contract? Just like that question explicitly. Can you answer that?
So absolutely. You know, we started late with our contract, and we haven't overspent yet. We're still within the original PO. And so, but since we were operating the garage at the same time, and we had parking compliance costs at the same time, even though we weren't getting the data, we still spent money. And we haven't completed our full 2 years yet. We're about 1 year in, and we need to increase the PO to complete everything. You know, our vendor has had increasing costs since the contract was written. You know, the contract was written in $2020, and we're in 2024, and the market has changed considerably. And so to complete our pilot, we need to adjust with the market, and what SP Plus's needs are for this as well.
Okay, so like that sort of is like a thing where it's like, okay, if we all agree, like again, this is in the sort of contract space and sort of having had procurement experience, like what are we doing to negotiate with the vendor or like bid this out or sort of create some sort of competition to not just be like, oh, okay, I'll sort of like pay the increased cost. Like, can you help me understand that?
Yeah, we did consider bidding this out, except it would completely halt our operations entirely, and we would then go to bid and then completely restart again and lose a lot of our momentum that we see right now. And so that's why we didn't go to bid for everything again, and we're pursuing a contract extension.
Okay, and so Casey, what would happen if we didn't allow that expansion of the dollars in the original contract?
We would run out of money, and effectively the compliance program and the garage operations would cease.
As of June?
As of June.
Okay. And so then can I ask you a question? Do you feel like you're getting what you need from this third? Because in theory, like you're the parking manager and they're there supporting you. And so I think, obviously, I think this is probably a hot seat for you, right? But like, do you feel like you're getting what you need out of this supplier?
Yeah, we truly are. We're getting our operations and our contract is being met. And so we're getting what we want out of this. And the original, the point of the program right now is to enforce existing rules as they are. And then take all the data that we've collected and implement other ones. And so we're just enforcing the rules as they are right now, and we are getting what we're paying for out of that from our vendor.
Okay. And so if we halted operations, it would essentially go to what I was saying, which is like gate is up, people park, no tickets on the thing, no permits, no anything, or what of that would you be able to still manage as the sort of city staff?
Yeah, we would be able to manage a bit of the day-to-day operations of the garage, event parking, and other things would start to fall off, but like monthly parking program, bike parking validations, all of those things would not be around.
So one thing that I'm sort of hearing this, and again, like forgive my corporate America brain on this one, but it's like, if I think about something that like isn't even sort of break even and it's not working and it's not necessarily like a thing that the city is sort of, you know, asking for, and instead of sort of a handful of businesses, like, is there a moment of reset, right? Where it's like, we don't fund the contract, things change for a period of time. I understand that's sort of upsetting because we're sort of partway through a thing, but it gives an opportunity for there to be a reset of like, okay, we now know what we know. Like, what do we want the strategy to be? Because to John's point, maybe it's just a couple of hours enforcement in the evening, right? And that's a completely different model, completely different contract, completely different signage, et cetera. And then again, maybe it's event parking only and some permit parking in the garage, and it's not a standard sort of Tuesday at 1 p.m. So like, I'm just putting it out there that if we do end up voting no, because I just want to be transparent, that's sort of where I feel as well. But if not, this is not a Casey thing, right? This is a, hey, let's maybe use this as an opportunity to reset and figure out like what it is that we do want to invest in. I have a hard time approving increased amount when we didn't go out to bid and it's not working and it's losing money. Just in the situation that we're in, it feels hard. And back to Cassandra's point, is sort of staying within the mission of Bureau. Just wondering what this is doing if we're hearing from the businesses that it's not doing the thing that it's intended to do. So thank you everybody for all the time that I took, and I will unmute now.
Thank you. Director Lair.
I have a question about the two different parts of the contract that we're looking at. I'm trying to focus on everything through a Bureau lens here. I think the point that the mayor and Director Duggar made are well taken. And I think that clearly there is an issue with the compliance. It should be taken up probably at a council level, not so much Bureau. It's actually not even clear to me why parking compliance is in Bureau's purview. But you know, that's neither here nor there. What is very clear is why the garage is part of Bureau. And it doesn't seem like the issues that have been addressed tonight have really been primarily focused on the garage. So I wonder, is it possible to split the two components of this contract where it's, well, if we think the garage is working okay, we're comfortable with that, we could vote yes for that part. But if compliance has all these problems that need to be addressed, can that be separated, or do these things need to be locked together?
Right now they're locked together. Long term, they don't. So the contract as it is now is both garage operations and parking enforcement. We can split those things later, or we could split those things, but right now it's both. We would need to go back up.
But why? Why, to his point? Why couldn't you split it? It's a contract. You could if we're doing an extension, you could write it any way you want.
That we'd have to renegotiate the extension. I think that's what he's trying to say.
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions, Director Lair?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Tipnon?
For the sake of continuity and keeping things moving forward, I'm prepared to accept the terms tonight. Or if we think that going back for negotiations would be problematic, I do agree that there's been enough change, especially in Old Town, to warrant scrutinizing parking, access to it, where it is, time of day, all of that kind of stuff. But just as it relates to the First Street Dining Commons, I think there was a appetite from council to just have more data at their fingertips to make an informed decision about this. And I do agree that I do think this is ultimately a council decision. It's one thing to discuss it tonight, but most of the people are weighing in on this are councilors. So I think that's where our head is going. So if it's possible for it to come back relatively soon for us to start having the conversation, because it's probably going to take a while for us to even figure it out. And that's not going to jive with the timeline that we've got here of having someone in place to enforce. So I'm in support of looking at this more holistically around the entire area as a council, but would really like to see more data. And I know that in and of itself is a lift for the city, requires resources, and I don't even know exactly what it would look like in terms of what exactly we're trying to capture and the mechanisms in which we would do that. So there's a lot here, but those are my immediate thoughts just after hearing what everyone else was saying.
Thank you, Counselor. One comment on the data. It's one thing to have the pure number of data points that we've received, but we have to figure out what that data actually represents. And that is a program that we are actively working on with a vendor to understand what the data means. And so getting just the points is one thing, but understanding what it all means is where we are actively working on.
Thank you. Tyler, do you have an expectation on when like the analysis of the information that's been gathered so far would be coming back?
Yeah, actually I'll ask Casey on that.
Yeah, it's currently being processed right now, and we should have some results in early May. In May is what our vendor has shared.
Okay, thank you. And do you think that through the conversations with the vendor, would they be amenable to, like, and obviously I know that contract negotiation takes time, but do you think they'd be amenable to just a 6-month extension, or do you think that that would potentially put operations at risk?
Yeah, before Casey responds to that, one of the points to also understand, this was a 2-year pilot, and we are month 9, I think, for the actual pilot parking compliance program itself. And so even understanding, what are the complaints or the issues that are actually out there besides being a new program that or actively managing the on-street parking versus not managing it, and understanding what is it, what are the issues. I think that's really important for us to understand, and we're willing and happy to try to figure that out. Without just cutting it off cold turkey for a program that is supposed to be a 2-year program.
Thank you, Tyler. Casey, did you want to respond at all to the 6-month contract question?
I would have to get back. I'm not sure what that would be. Yeah,
it's totally fine. City Manager, I saw your hand raised. Would you like to chime in?
Yes, thank you. So I really would encourage the board to consider adopting the contract to ensure that we have continuity. We recognize some of the questions that were stated this evening. And what I would like to commit to the council is coming back in less than 6 months with the data that we do have that makes sense, so that we can give you some options around the expansion of the time frame that we heard several of you expressed an interest in at a policy level. So I agree that that's something that council can digest and make some suggestions to staff on how they'd like to see that transpire. And then we can build that into the pilot program. As Tyler said, it's 2 years, we're 9 months in. Let's try to get some continuity and start working out the kinks offline with the contract. But I think programmatically, what I'm hearing from the council, and that we really need to talk about the hourly expansion. So I'd like to get that commitment publicly made to you, that will come back so that we can address that, because there's concerns about waiting too long. So I hope that that's helpful in your deliberations this evening.
Thank you, City Manager. Yeah, I think for me, my ask would also be just to make sure that you have a chance to come back to us early enough that should this lead to like a new RFP or something like that, that we're not putting the timeline at risk again. Especially just kind of hearing where this board is leading, I don't think there'd be appetite to do any sort of extension, right, without some further scrutiny and conversation. So I would just say like 6 months would give us 9 months to go, right? Since we're like from now, it sounds like we've got about 15 months if we went for the year extension. So anyways, I know things take time, and I know staff has a lot going on. So just want to make sure that if you can come back to us and make sure that the staff has an early enough lead on what the next step would be. Director Duggar.
I think Director Teeter is up in front of me.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Director Teeter.
Thanks. Yeah, last comment for me. I think I feel very strongly about approving the contract. I've got a lot of concerns with our overall policy approach to this, and I think our conversations as a council will help address the time frame of enforcement, the cost of permits, and things like that. But I know when I was the executive director of the Beaverton Downtown Association for the couple of years that we were waiting for the contract to actually start for us to actually start having enforcement on the street. Businesses and people kept on asking me, like, when is enforcement going to start? When is enforcement going to start? these cars are always on the street in front of our business and we don't have customers able to access us. And I think if we don't approve this contract, we'll enter that same negative space again where there's even less availability of parking. Like, does the contract address our evening hours? No, but neither do our signage on the streets. So I'd be very worried about the consequences of not approving the contract. I do want to see the improvements. I think we will once we have those conversations as a council. I just want to see it keep on going. So I'm gonna vote yes.
Thank you, Director Teeter. Director Duggar, and then Director Kim.
I just want to clarify, because I think people are getting confused, and like, I'm not suggesting that the program end in 6 months. I'm suggesting a 6-month runway for us to get the contract, get the changes that we want in there. I do contracting for a living. If we say a SOW that says 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., that's what the supplier is going to do, right? I'm suggesting a 6-month extension for us to give city staff an extension of the current terms to give city staff time to work to get the changes that we want. I'm not suggesting the program end in 6 months. And number two, the point I would make is, if we don't fix this, all of the data that we're getting is going to be incomplete. It's not going to have the actual data points that we need to make those policy decisions, right? Like if one of the data points is enforcement in the evening, guess what? We're not going to have, right? Like I consistently hear over and over and over and over, weekly, literally weekly, because I walk downtown 10 times a week, right? From business on, like, the parking is a problem in the evenings. Parking is a problem in the evenings. You know, sometimes it's build a garage, sometimes it's other things, but mostly it's like, help me get people to my business in the evenings when this is a problem. And if we collect this data, we're not getting the level of data that we need. I'm just uncomfortable extending this for another year without getting that, because I don't think I can make the policy decisions I need to make, which I do agree is a council decision, without that data being really good, without it being complete. And so right now, like I would support a 6-month extension to give the staff the time to fix that. I don't think I can support a year.
Director Kim.
Yes, I think we spent a lot of time on this, and I don't know. I'm still the point that Director Lear brought up about how this is a bureau issue for the parking garage portion, but for the parking compliance, I don't know why we're discussing it here. So that's the first point. Second point is I'm separating out the contract versus performance. And obviously I'm not involved. I'm not as familiar with the policies and the issues that we have with the compliance part. But it seems that whether we can extend, but still give the contractor a direction that this is what they need to do. And if they're not performing, then that they can be put on notice whether this contract is extended or not. But it seems to me that the extension is needed to make sure that there's continuity. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Director Kim. Does staff have a response to the questions about, other than like it's contract together, but if anyone wants to address the street parking enforcement versus the garage scenario?
Yeah, it's going to actually address a couple things. And maybe since my mind is already at the second point, if it's okay, Chair, go that direction. And that is on, are we talking about a contract issue or a policy situation that we need to change, which would be the on-street parking time, right? The SP Plus, they're doing what is based upon city code for managing the parking spaces based upon what is signed out there, or parking in an ADA space, or at a ramp, or in front of a hydrant. All those things are solidified in our code. And that's what they are actually doing. They're doing what they are supposed to be doing with what we have in place. If we need to change hours and go to at 8, 9 p.m. for an example, then that is a separate kind of conversation that we can get into to make sure that we are have that data, and then we can actually move forward with a change that is in the field, and it has nothing to do with SP Plus because they're actually doing that work. Second, so back to the first part, garage to on-street compliance. Obviously, Vera built the garage, and we had to set it up in order to operate, manage that with professionals who know what they're doing in order to operate, manage. We have a lot of technology in the garage. We have the gates, we have the ticketing, we have help me Parker vendor. So you need help, press the button, somebody comes onto the microphone or onto the speaker and helps you out. And those are all part of the actual operations in the garage. Along with that, it is tied to the parking compliance, on-street parking compliance. We've been hearing that there was no turnover in downtown because we were not doing a real good job of managing those spaces. So along with the garage, we decided as a Bureau board that we would have two running simultaneously, operations of the garage and then also on the on-street parking compliance. When we bid it out, we could have taken any two different contractors. SP Plus came in, it tied it together as the garage and on-street compliance, and we were able to negotiate a contract. They started with the garage work. We were in COVID. We were very open about we didn't want to do any changes to the downtown in COVID with the small businesses. That was a decision that we made. So we bumped it out to the point of starting that on-street parking compliance in relationship to Beaverton Police and the Police Association. And we worked with them diligently to get that MOA. Hopefully I was able to answer some of that.
Thank you. Mayor Beatty.
Sorry, I'm breaking my own general rule by coming back in, but here's where I think I agree with everyone that we're getting mixed up in policy and we're getting mixed up in that, but that is not our fault because this is the way that it was brought to us. And I need some assurance. I would like us to consider a 6-month extension like Councilor Duggar is offering. Like their job, your guys' job is to go back to the contractor and say, we need 6 months. I don't want to tell you how to do it. I will not agree to a year. There's 0 ways for me to the way that I can control this situation is through this budget item. And so I have given staff plenty of opportunity to address the parking concerns over the last year that we've been doing this, and it's not been a priority. I'm not convinced it's going to be a priority because not in any of the talking you guys have done have you said, we're going to go back, we're going to talk to the vendor, we're going to redo training, we're going to make sure they do it the Beaverton way. So my inclination is to vote no totally, because I just think to Sarah's point here, this is why people hate government. It's not working. It's not generating revenue. So let's extend it for a year and ask for more money. So I would be inclined to move off my no position if we agree to 6 months and it comes back to City Council to address the policy aspects of this. And those are the two things. That's where I'm at. If those two things aren't met, I'm a no vote.
I think if I can respond, I think we can definitely go back to them. I can't guarantee you that the company's willing to do 6 months, but that's obviously something we can go back and negotiate. I think the concern around continuity is real. And, I think I assume that's why you're willing to do 6 months. And that also would be part of our policy discussion we can bring back. And I think following on what city manager had said, I think we're happy to bring it to council for the policy discussion. And I guess in terms of some of the retraining or comments around how the program is being implemented, I'm not sure how well or how much we're able to intervene around the company's employees, but I'm sure we can share the feedback and certainly seek for them to address how they're engaging with residents and running the program. But I think ultimately, the 6 months is certainly a possibility. You know, I think that's the question though, is until we have a second party, right? We have agreement, we won't know for sure.
Thank you, Dan. I don't see any further requests for comment or question in the chat. So is there a motion that anyone would like to make?
Chair, I'll put forward a motion to approve the contract extension as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion by Director Timnon, seconded by Director Kim to approve the garage operations pilot contract and budget extension as presented in the bill. Is there any further debate on the motion?
I'll just say this is not working, and we're going to vote for something that's not working.
Further debate? Director Lair.
I think I'm going to vote in favor of this, but very, very reluctantly. And that's only because I feel like we've been backed into a corner here where we have to make a decision right now, even though it seems like the majority of the board here is not happy with what we have. But I view the potential downside of the contract expiring as too big to take that risk. But this is very reluctant, and I would say in the future, if it's possible to get a bigger lead time on these, so we would have a chance to have this debate, give the concerns, go through council, go through the proper channels, rather than just saying, hey, we need to get this done, or in a couple months the garage is closing. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Lair. Director Timnon.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. And that's why I made the motion. I think we've said what needs to be said tonight, and we need to get this contract extended as well. I'm personally, I think I'm picking up on some vibes from staff that it's dicey to go back and ask for a 6-month extension, knowing we're not meeting again for a while. Are we going to call an emergency meeting if they say no dice? Or it just seems like it's pushing forward something that let's just get that part done, and also have these conversations around a rapidly changing area with different types of demand and a lot of feedback from community members and businesses that we need to rethink what parking looks like in the urban renewal area, specifically in the Old Town area. So those are my thoughts on this. And yeah, I agree that we shouldn't wait until we get down to the wire with the contract extension around something like this. But I also get that maybe the urgency around the changes that council especially is wanting to see didn't really get loud enough until tonight. But we'll be looking forward to seeing the data that the city manager said would be coming to us, and start having some pretty unprecedented conversations for the city.
Thank you. Director Duggar.
The Director Lair, that was a great point, and the answer to that is a 6-month extension of the current terms to allow staff to go back and fix these things, not to give another year. And that's plenty of time, right? Like I literally lead a team of contracting people. And if we have to meet in an emergency because they say no, we won't extend 6 months, that would be really unusual because nothing changes, right? Like we're not saying throw in the changes that we want in the 6-month extension. We're saying extend the exact business relationship that is proposed tonight. Instead of taking it 12 months, take it 6 months in a good faith effort to fix some of the concerns that we have. That's how we make this sustainable. And in my mind, that's why I'm voting no.
I'll just share that I will be voting in support, and to remind everyone that I asked for a motion. I did not ask for a specific motion, so you had a chance to make a motion for a 6-month contract, and one was not presented. I'm just going to put that out there. So I will be voting yes. I do think that there is data being gathered. We did hear tonight that the data is being gathered after the posted enforcement hours, and so I really look forward to seeing the analysis back. I don't think I have enough information to be making a policy decision one way or another, and I do think it's meant for another forum, so I will be voting yes. Are there any further comments in support or against of the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing no further debate, will the recorder please call the roll call vote?
Director Duggar,
No.
Chair Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Director Kimmy,
Yes.
Director Teeter,
Yes.
Director Tivnon,
Yes.
Director Beatty,
No.
Director Kim,
Yes.
Director Walton,
No.
Director Ulvin,
Yes.
Director Lair.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you for the robust debate. I do believe city staff will be coming back very soon in the near future to talk more about this. And thank you for everyone for just having such an involved debate. This is an important topic, so thank you very much. I think it's also helpful to see the direction that we are headed and, you know, kind of give a preview of things that we want to see change in the future. So thank you. Our final agenda item this evening is the executive director's report. Dan, do you have anything to update us on tonight?
I do. Thank you, Chair. Try and keep it brief since I know I'm between you and the exit, but have a few things. One, just want to thank you for the discussion on the parking item. We'll definitely be scheduling a council item, and I'll make sure that I feel like parking compliance is my new hat that I'll be wearing, but I'll make sure that we get you some data and some follow-up as well at the Bureau Board. Just want to also say congratulations on passing the 5-year action plan. I know that was a long labor of love, some really good sessions though, back and forth on brainstorming and visioning. And it's been really great to see that come to fruition. And I feel good about where the direction we're taking and where you all have pointed us. And now the exciting part of implementation will come. And we heard program income policy coming back as well. So we'll definitely be working with the city attorney on that as well. Wanted to, for the non-council part of the Bureau Board, wanted to mention we have hired a new community development director, and his name is Andy Varner. He's currently the city manager in North Plains, and Andy will be joining us June 3rd, and will promptly be tossed into the deep end of onboarding and learning the organization, and probably will be riding shotgun on the parking compliance with me, as well as many other things. But he does have some great experience, some breadth and depth, but has been the executive director of the North Plains Urban Renewal Agency, has been working recently on urban growth boundary expansion as well. Has a good amount of depth in economic development and community development topics in general, and several stops in his career path in a couple different states. And so we're excited for Andy to join us and for him to kind of get into the department. And I know he's excited to get to learn all the things that are going on in Beaverton and help support the direction we're going. Wanted to highlight a couple other things briefly. One, a building improvement program grantee, the grand reopening of Rama Thai is coming up. We're hoping to get y'all an invitation to their reopening and ribbon cutting. We expect it to be later this month. We're still waiting to hear exactly when, so we'll send out some details as to when that event will happen. But they received the new owners of that business received a $75,000 building improvement grant from the city, from Bureau, and they were able to do some remodeling and spruce up the business, and they're excited to get back at it and serve some great food. Wanted to highlight, as we get into May, the budget is coming forward. So the city and the Bureau budget will be coming forward. And so we will have budget committee for the city May 7th. The Bureau budget committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 13th at 6 p.m. And so you'll get a link and some information in your packet soon. And we'll have that discussion followed by the Bureau budget adoption, which would be on the June 4th meeting. It would be essentially a brief adoption of the Bureau budget recommendation ahead of the City Council's adoption of the City Council. We hope City Council adoption of the City Council budget hopefully will occur at the same meeting. The business meeting for Bureau, the next one will be June 28th, and that's when we'll do a more robust business agenda. And then lastly, just wanted to highlight in your packet, you've also gotten an update or an updated area project update, which I want to thank Janine for taking on. That's something, it's a robust and detailed document. It's something that Chase had been working on before he left us to move on to the neighborhood program. But it's great information to have, and we're happy to share it. I'm really happy that Janine was able to kind of dive in and take that on. And I think with that, I will leave it. And thank you again for the conversation on both topics today.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Dan?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Dan or staff, in this update for the pre-development grant program, there is information about a new narrative infill redevelopment for 41 permanent supportive affordable housing units. Does anybody have details about where that'll be or when it's coming through?
I think I may look to Tyler for more details on that. I think his team's more involved.
Yeah, there was a pre-application conference this past week, and it's a location on Henry Street. So that is between Hawken and Milliken, basically south of the Pacific Pride fuel station. They received a pre-development grant this year. Janine can fill in a little bit more detail on that. And it is now officially gone public because of the pre-application conference. And Janine, maybe you can fill in on the specificities.
Yeah, I won't go into too much here, but they have the existing 21-ish units on the property, and they've got about 50% lot coverage or less. So they're going to be developing on the balance of that site, partitioning it and building about a 4-story complex that will include a percentage of permanent supportive housing units, and other units will be below 60% AMI.
Great, that's exciting. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on the executive director's report? I had one, Dan, just noticing on the Reeser and the parking garage that our status is still the temporary certificate of occupancy. And I was just wondering, like, how long is it until it's customary for that to become permanent? Or like, do we get permanent ever?
We should definitely get permanent. And I think it's more just closing out construction items that typically would hold it up. So I think we're just still in the process of completing some of the modifications and things like that, to meet the standard that the city will accept.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. That's the final agenda item for this evening. So, seeing nothing further to address, I will adjourn our meeting. Thank you all. We'll see you in a few weeks for our budget meeting.